Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI. Each passing day has seen confirmed cases of COVID-19 rise in Nigeria. The country has reached a level where the number of daily infections are now recorded in hundreds, signaling an increase in community transmission. That has been one of the greatest fears of the outbreak now, because the more person-to-person spread, the more difficult it is for contact tracing. But that is also why Lagos State government now and the Federal Capital Territory have embarked on a house-to-house search to detect any possible case. In addition, Lagos State has also opened 20 sample collection centers where people who fit the case definition of COVID-19 can visit and drop their samples for testing. This is one strategy believed to ramp up testing capacity in the state and also aid efforts to flatten the coronavirus curve in the state. Let's take a look at this report now that details what actually happens at a sample collection site.
This is the COVID-19 testing center, or better still, sample collection center in the Ikeja local government area of Lagos State. Contrary to popular opinion, not everyone can gain access into this place. According to the NCDC, there are 3 categories for being tested for COVID-19. The first are persons with symptoms of the disease, including cough, fever, and difficulty breathing. The second are returning travelers, especially those from high-risk countries. And the third are persons living in community with a high number of confirmed COVID-19 cases. But most of the people who have been going into this place are persons who have been handpicked by officials during the door-to-door search in Lagos State. Well, let's now go in and find out what the procedures are to get tested for COVID-19. There are so many procedures from what we found out to get tested for COVID-19 here. And the first actually is to get your hands clean. We know that COVID-19 can be transmitted through contact with infected persons, infected surfaces, and a whole lot of other things. So when people walk in here, the first thing they are required to do is to wash their hands, and that is supervised by an official who ensures that every part of the hands are clean and sterilized. After that, the people then take a sit. Now, social distancing is very much observed during this process. People are seated with spaces between them 2 meters at the least. After that, they wait for their turn. They get to speak to the official, who take their data, or names, house address, date of birth, symptoms, what have they been observing in the past 2 weeks. With your data and contact details collected, the patients now proceed to the testing area right over here. Now, at this testing area, 2 things actually happen. First, they take a sit, after which their samples are collected. And after that, they are given a cup in which they are supposed to deposit a mucus from the cough. Basically, most of them have severe cough as a symptom. After that, they hand that back to the official, who then bag them and deposit it in a storage container, after which it's taken to the testing lab. The samples taken here today will be transported to the Infectious Disease Hospital Yaba for testing. According to the officials here, about 80 persons whose samples have been collected today will get their results in about 3 days. Now, if they test positive, the persons will be evacuated to the isolation center for treatment, and their families will be quarantined and tested for COVID-19.
Okay, let's discuss this further. I'm being joined on the program via Skype by Dr. Tuyime Bamadu, who is a public health physician. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us on the program. We're seeing the numbers go up now, and of course, we're being told that community transmission, it's here, and that's the reason why we're seeing these numbers go up. How serious is this issue of community transmission, and why should we worry about it?
Yeah, thank you, DEJI. March 26th, Nigeria closed its border. Both land and air border were closed. At that time, we had just 51 cases of COVID and just 1 death. Now, since then, a month after, just barely a month after, we now have as much as 981 cases, 31 deaths. In a single day, 108 new cases. Now, what else what else could account for that if not community transmission? Okay. Now, we saw what is happening in Kano. We are now seeing that Lagos, Kano, and Federal Capital Territory are becoming epicenters for this disease. So, community transmission is here. Sadly so. We seem to still be... We're still trying to use nomenclature to define whether it's community transmission or not. But it's here. Obviously, it is here. And we saw the governor of Kano State crying and saying that, he's helpless, he cannot meet up with the testing. And as long as he cannot meet up with testing, you understand the depth of what you are in. Here we are. We just have to find a way to navigate around it. Hopefully, we can easily heed warnings that will help us to return the society back to normal after this ravaging.
Could you just explain this to me? Because we've seen cases as part of the community transmission now. We've seen cases of people who never had any contact with people who were infected, that they never came across them, they never traveled, no travel history, they never went anywhere, yet they contracted the disease. How does one explain that?
Yeah, again, even at the initial stage, when we're trying to understand the complete transmission of the virus, we were talking about mystery transmissions in the past. We're talking about mystery transmissions. But let's agree that it's been for a long time, the virus has been amongst us, without us.
Yeah, exactly, because I was just going to ask that. Is that not an indication that the virus may have been here before even that index case came in?
Yeah, again, one of the reports said that 2/3 of the people that left China cannot be traced, even at the initial stage. Now, we have quite a lot of traffic there's a lot of traffic between China and Nigeria, another African country and China. So, Nigeria as, the financial capital of Africa, we see a lot of these people coming in, and it's not surprising that they might have then brought this thing in, because from Italy to Nigeria, from India to Nigeria, from China to Nigeria, they might have brought all these things in before we now took quick notice of the fact that the virus is with us. So these are really issues. These are the things that can actually account for those mystery transmission that we cannot be able to explain for now.
And if that is the case, is there a possibility too, as we're beginning to see in the United States of America, where it's now been discovered, even in New York as well, when they carried out this antibody test now, they discovered, look, the virus may have been in the U.S. even long before it was discovered, and that the virus had actually been in some people, and at some point, they didn't know about it, they got healed just like that, and then they developed antibodies against the virus. Is there a chance that we could have that kind of situation here?
For me, as much as I'm not ruling out the chance, but I don't think it's the probable thing. Because what happened is that, that the virus has what we call R0, the infection ability of about 2. So a virus like that, even if it's with us here, we'll have seen those transmission and even the manifestation. Okay? It cannot just be that the virus is with us, we're not seeing anything until China announced, then we start saying, no. We should have been seeing that kind of pattern of new infection, new respiratory infection that can point to us that there's a new disease in town. That could have also happened in America. But I can assure you that this because there's a way you trace the origin of these viruses, it has been shown that it came from Wuhan, China.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. But what I'm asking is there a chance too that, look, even if it came from that area, that, some people may have developed some kind of antibodies against it here, that they got it without knowing, and the thing just healed on its own, without them having to show symptoms.
Yes, absolutely. We know that 80 to 90% of people that cause this virus will go without symptoms or mild symptoms, as the case may be. We're just talking about less than 5% that will show real manifestation of the disease. And that is what we're seeing now, okay? So there's no doubt that quite a lot of people might have picked the virus, they just, manage it with the immune system, especially those ones that are still younger with good immune system will have managed it and thought it was malaria or typhoid or whatever, and then treated it and they're okay. But in that wise, they would have, we don't know the contagiousness, ability of them to pass the germ from one person to another, even after they might have, gotten their own immunity. So these are the critical areas that needed research and answers.
A lot of areas actually need answers on this coronavirus thing. But let me ask you, as we are now beginning to see health workers now get infected. The NCDC the other day, or the Minister of Health the other day, said about 40 health workers are now infected. How serious is that in our fight against this deadly virus?
DEJI, very, very serious. Now, for you to fight against the virus, you need health workers. If the virus is speaking on health workers, then that means that your ability to fight against the virus is being compromised in a way. What it means is that the health workers can infect other patients, they can infect their family, they can infect their colleagues. So, transmission from the health station is a very, very challenging thing. It's a real trouble. So we should do everything possible to ensure that we minimize the infection or transmission of health workers and further transmission. Because, what do we do in that case? Of course, that highly index of suspicion, we have to really deploy the personal protective equipment. We have to ensure that these health workers get tested every now and then, and create that high standard of triaging between patient, health worker, and management system. That is what can really help us. Infection of health workers means that we're depleting further the number of health workers we have in the country, because look at it, 40,000 doctors, for instance, dealing with 200 million people. How is that going to help our fight? Look at it. The Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital in Kano had just, less than 10 ICU beds to serve the whole of the northern Nigeria. How would that help anybody? Look at it. And then, you look at it, that even doctors were going on strike in Kano before now, insisting that they need personal protective equipment. So if we are not getting that done, even during the Lassa fever, you remember how a doctor picked it while he was operating on a pregnant woman, attending an emergency case, and then the doctor died. So these are the challenges. If we are not really protecting the top people, the people at the forefront of the fight against coronavirus, I'm talking about the health workers, then we're in big trouble.
And for doctors like you, exactly how are you dealing with this? I mean, you run your own private hospital. How are you dealing with this? Do you have that fear when patients come to you? Because we're beginning to see some hospitals now actually turn patients away. And that's also a challenge because people may have other illness. COVID-19 is not the only illness we have here. Malaria is even more endemic here than COVID-19. And then people want to go to hospital and the doctors are not willing to see them. For someone like you, how are you handling it?
Somebody like me, for instance, is to just do a serious triaging. What we do is that 1, 2, 3 level before you even get to the place. Okay. You have to come, wash your hand, do your temperature, put on face mask, have a sanitizer, you are given a glove to enter. And then, even from that distance, the questions are asked about, your complaints. Once cough and this thing is involved, then we know that there's no need to actually get in touch with you. Because, of course, the barrier examination is maintained. What the government needs to do at this stage is to really set the standard for those hospitals that still want to do full work. Because for us, we have to be doing part of the work. We have to do the work in parts. Yeah, for people that want to really do the work, what the government needs to do is to set up the standard and support. Because sometimes the personal protective equipment may be in short supply. So what is the government doing in providing for all the health workers? Because at the end of the day, the health workforce you are looking for is not just in your system. For instance, Lagos State has just barely 1,300, 1,400 medical doctors. So this one,
but for those in private practice like you, should the government be providing you with PPE? Shouldn't you be able to get yours?
No, this is a peculiar situation. It's a very peculiar situation because, again, what happens is that if the government is not providing support at that level and you have increased, what the option left for the private hospital is to shut down. I said that, listen, for this period, we're not going to do any treatment. Okay, that's the option left for them. Do you want them to shut down? Okay, and quite a lot of them will be shutting down, and that will put more pressure on government establishment. So if you cannot find a way, you must be able to find a way around it to encourage and ensure that these people can do this work with support you are giving to them. So in fact, part of the support, is such that even the PPE that's been distributed, they must be able to bring some and seek for accountability in those PPE. If you're not doing that, if you're not, making tests easier, at that level, because normally now everybody that runs fever is a case of suspicion. But the point is that you must be able to do tests to understand that this is the extent, whether they're having COVID or not having COVID.
Okay, and now let me just ask you a question. Now, if someone presented, someone came to your hospital and presents with malaria, and then you because of the period we are now, someone, as you've said, if someone presents with malaria, you suspect it's COVID. How then do you convince yourself it's not COVID? How because you don't have, as we know, private hospitals do not have the capacity to do COVID-19 tests. So how then are you able to certify that it's just malaria and not COVID?
You cannot, except the person actually give history of travel or contact with somebody who must have died of COVID. That will help you again. History becomes very, really clear-cut. Now, apart from that, for you to do the details examination, you don't even want to get too close to the person. You don't want to get too close to the person. So the point is this: if you empower the private hospitals and the private settings and other people outside the government to be able to have access to those tests and do it for people as much as possible. Because look at it. For now, we've just done about 9,000 or so tests, whereas Ghana has done times 5 of that, times 10 of that, times 5
even
times
though people are questioning the method
so
of Ghana.
We need to
the method of Ghana is actually
tests.
different. The
yes,
method they are deploying.
We need to raise those number of tests that we can do if you want to see the results. You understand? So now, because it's very difficult, let's be factual. It's very difficult because the other option left for those private hospitals is to close down and wait until the government itemize clear pathway of involvement. Yes, they can help in campaign, they can help in education, they can help in. But again, when it comes to if they cannot do the test, the defining thing of coronavirus is the test. Because let's face it, if you say somebody is coughing, we've been coughing before, okay? If somebody has catarrh, we've been having catarrh before.
Of course.
But the defining thing is the ability to do that test. Once you cannot do that test, you cannot say this person has corona. So, of course, there is triaging. There are things you look at, clear-cut things you look at and make you suspect coronavirus. But the test is the defining thing. So without the test, there's a lot of mistakes that can happen.
Now, the Lagos State government has rolled out what it calls eco-telemed, where patients can actually call doctors, either video call or voice call, and then talk with the doctors, tell them what their symptoms are, and then the doctors can just go on and give their prescription. Don't you think it's something that private people in private practice like you too should be adopting at this time? Is there a challenge with that?
Yeah, matter of factly, I think this collaboration should have started even before we got to this number. Lagos State should not act as if, or even federal government should not act as if they are the only partaker in the healthcare of the people. Because at the end of the day, we see that quite a large number of people, run away from government settings and patronize one private system or the other. So they should have leverage on that huge thing to ensure that at the end of the day, when the COVID comes to the country, those people are also ready. Now, the training, all I have explained is that first of all, they have to elevate the training and ensure that at least, are you ready to participate in this thing? Come and have some training. Bring 2 people and do training. Now, even if you can, the process which they're putting on, which includes some centers where they can make phone call and do all those things, they can't do it alone. I don't just understand why we think that everything has to be focused on government doing it. Government can set the standard and support and monitor, but they can't do it alone because let's face it, how many places do you have government presence and hospital? I can tell you virtually all the health centers in the whole of Lagos, for instance. I can tell you, I know those ones that are functional. So there's, the gaps in healthcare delivery is provided by a lot of these services from private and individuals in a way. What are you now doing to ensure that those services are provided and they have means of making the provision easier for you? There are ways we collect data. The data are collected, but again, that one has to be every month.
But for private hospitals period,
we expect
like
the
yours,
data is collected every week. And then you must be able to have, support the private setting, support other people, other practitioners of health in that regard, to be able to do tests, to be able to have access to PPE, to have the knowledge of what needs to be done in case they are suspecting COVID.
But for private people in private practice like you, do you actually need the government to, for instance, come up with a method of engaging your clients now through maybe telephone and video conferencing? I don't think you would need the government to do that.
Would I
need
the government?
No, I'm saying, do you need the government for a private practitioner like you, for instance?
You can do your thing, but honestly, this is a peculiar situation. We're dealing with a pandemic that has, ramification effects on so many aspects of our nationhood. So the control must be so centralized and organized and structured. Okay? That is why you see that in some other country, you see the president coming to do briefing nearly every day. Okay? That's because it's a peculiar thing. Now, in that regards, because we've not, in our own generation, we've not seen something like this. Okay? Where we have a virus overwhelming every aspect of human living. Okay? So it cannot be the usual thing that we say, okay, leave private people alone, let them go and do it. Because, for instance, you want a PCR machine, that can then do the test. First of all, there's a skill involved in the PCR. There's purchase of the PCR. That's a huge money. Which private hospital will have that? How much do they collect per patient? Have you ever seen a doctor that will bring a patient in and say that your bill is 20 million, 30 million? They'll be looking at you as funny, okay? So, but again, in other settings, other climes, where we've seen a lot of participation and activities of the private setting in the healthcare delivery, we've seen the involvement, the inflection of the financial system into supporting, those structure, those private structures to be able to enhance their capacity. But what we're seeing in Nigeria is that, to your tent, Israel, and then when there are issues, they want to see who to blame. They look for a scapegoat in the private setting. You can't run health like that, because at the end of the day, for someone like me, once I choose to clean my hand away from health system again, I'll still live my life. But again, that would be a skill you have lost in the health system, an important skill you have lost in the health system. So I expect government to tap into every skills, every experiences to deal not just with coronavirus, but a lot of negative health indices that is bedeviling the country. So we're looking at something like that. But it seems government want to showcase the building they have, without human resources. Even the human resources are, with some, they may not have the depth of some experiences that you can also find in private. So the synergy must be built. If you don't build that synergy now, God is an opportunity to build the synergy. At the end of the day, health challenge will affect both the health challenge will affect both the private and the public at the same time.
Dr. Tuyimeba, thank you very much for your time. All right, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. On DEJI 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country. I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly. God forbid that I go to join that
DEJI 360, providing clarity to issues.